Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit amitheasshole and it's by user Reward Specialist 3390. Am I the a-hole for telling my husband his mom can't live with us for months-long stretches? My husband and I have been married for almost 2 years and our son is 10 months old. We live in Canada. I grew up here while my husband immigrated when he was a student. My parents live nearby, which has been invaluable during my pregnancy and since. My mom comes over regularly to help us out. My husband and her are on good terms too, so it's been going well. His parents live in another country. We have visited them once since we got married. That was 7 months ago. The time prior to that was our wedding itself, which took place there. My husband has been talking about my mother-in-law visiting soon for a long visit, which I was happy with. We recently moved into our new house. I've done a good job decorating it. We have a large guest room and I was looking forward to hosting her, especially since it would make my husband happy. A couple of days ago, he was complaining about how detailed her visa application was. I told him I was surprised it was so thorough. He told me that it's because while regular visa forms allow a stay of 6 months max, this one allows 2 years. I asked why would she need a stay of more than 6 months? He said that she had been thinking of winding up her medical practice and basically retiring, and this would then allow her to stay for a longer visit if we all decide that it works. I was stunned. I told him he should just do the regular application because his mom wouldn't be staying anywhere near close to 6 months. I had it in my mind that she'd be staying for like a month. That's how long we stayed for when we went there. He said that's his mom. She tells him how alone she feels. She can't go to my brother-in-law's because he lives with roommates and we can't just put a timer on her visit here. Of course you can. That's what return flights are for. He said she's been looking forward to helping us out with our son. I told him we don't need help. We manage fine on our own and with my mom's help. I wanted to host his mom as a guest, not as a part of our household. He complained that how was it fair that my parents could visit whenever they wanted while his can't. I was hurt by that because my parents have helped us out a lot and I asked him if he wants us to limit how often my mom comes to visit. He said no, that's not what he meant, that he likes her, but it wasn't fair to his parents. My reply was that when my mom comes, she goes at the end of the day. That wouldn't be the case with his. I ended it by saying he should look into the easier regular form because she can't be thinking of staying for that long. He chose to sleep on the couch that night and has been cold with me since. I hate that. We've never been cold to each other like this. I talked to my mom too. She said that having his mom live with us for long stretches would definitely affect me. That this is worth fighting for. I haven't seen him working on the application since. Last night, he went out when his mom called. When he came back, I asked him how she took it. He told me he had told her he's looking into what application best suits her. He asked me if I'd changed my mind. I said no. He just shook his head and started watching TV. Am I the a-hole? No, OP, you're not the a-hole. Honestly, 6 months, like you say, would already be too much time. But he's looking into a visa that lasts up to 2 years? That's not a visit, that's coming to live. I think your argument made perfect sense when he said that it wasn't fair because of the amount of time that your parents spend versus his. The thing is, your mom leaves at the end of the day. And as you correctly pointed out, your mother-in-law wouldn't. So in my opinion, the only way that I would compromise is that, okay, she can stay with us for a month. And in that time, if she wants to spend up to 2 years with us, she needs to get her own apartment. With the caveat that she also shouldn't be visiting every single day if she does so. At least not more than your mom, and hopefully your mom isn't there every day either. And what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's check out the community comments. No Cockroach 4248 says, not the a-hole. I have a sneaky feeling your husband is trying to sponsor his mother to stay permanently in Canada. This could well have been his plans all along. You need to make it clear to your husband his mother is not to stay with you for a long period of time. Definitely not permanently. Misty Sky 1999 says there is no 2-year visitor visa to Canada, but there is a 5-year visitor super visa for which you need to provide documents to prove you will financially support the parent or grandparent the entire time. Your husband is not being fully truthful on what he is doing nor what his full intentions are. Edit to add, not the a-hole. Jenny Bean Sees All says, not the a-hole. If she's winding up her practice, she can move to Canada in her own place and visit like your mom. No need for her to live with you. Unable Station 163 says, not the a-hole. Your husband should not have invited his mother to move in with you without making sure you were cool with it. Work on alternatives where she can stay with you for a month and then into something else. If he wanted her to move to your country, he probably should have made sure your new house had an in-law suite. And Boeing 36780 says, OP is not the a-hole, but there are at least 2 issues. 1. Mother-in-law staying for an extended period of time. 2. Husband attempting to unilaterally host her at your house without discussing this with you. 2 is really the bigger issue because without 2, 1 never happens. So OP, as much as you're correctly focused on the issue of mother-in-law staying for a long time, you also need to address the issue of your husband attempting to unilaterally invite her there without discussing it with you. You should ask him how he would feel if your parents just showed up one day and started living in your guest room without any discussion with him. Presumably, he would not be pleased. Additional information from OP's comments. I should clarify, my husband and I are both of Pakistani descent. I grew up here, he came here as a student. Also, a lot of comments have said that we can get her an apartment. That's not a good idea. There's going to be a language barrier, she won't be able to drive, there's a lot of reasons that won't work. I'm pretty sure if she rents an apartment, she will end up being our guest again within a couple of weeks. Also, my father-in-law is alive and yes, they're together. I don't think he has plans for coming for a long stay like her, maybe shorter ones. My father-in-law might come in for a week or 2, I think. About the visa process, he said that he was doing the 2-year application just so we have options once she's here and said it'll be a collective decision. I told him there's no need, I have my decision already. I will not be okay with anything more than a couple of months. Even that's pushing it in my mind, let alone more than 6 months. That's actually where I thought I may have been the a-hole. He was talking about options and I kind of just shut him down. The community agrees that OP is not the a-hole and OP has given us 2 updates, so let's move on with the first one to see what happened next. Thank you for the feedback in the original post. Yesterday, when he came back from work, I tried to start the conversation again. He had been giving me the cold shoulder since all this started. I told him I'm his wife of 2 years and the mother of his child. This isn't how we're going to communicate. We started talking after that. I held my ground that his mom staying with us for so long wasn't tenable. If she wanted to visit Canada for longer than a couple of months, she would have to live in her own apartment. She would also need to learn how to drive or use public transport. She's used to being driven by a hired driver in Pakistan, and a whole bunch of other changes that she'd need to get used to. And that I don't see myself changing my mind on this, so he needs to be honest with her and himself and not go down the "we'll keep our options open" route. He said that he knows her living with us for an extended stay would require some changes on our part, but he was asking me to do this as a favor to him. He said that I claim to love him and yet can't do him this favor for his mom. I actually started sobbing when he said this. It was so hurtful that he was using this as a litmus test for our love. I said her being around for years would ruin our parenthood with our first child, that I want us to raise our child the way we see fit, not his mom. Also, all the intimate moments we have, our sex life, everything would suffer. My parents are Pakistani too. I know this will happen. He again asked me to just not shut the door completely, that he'll tell his mom the stay can only be for a month or so, and I can let him know if I think the change wasn't too much. And we landed on a compromise, that for now, they'll do the regular visa application that only allows a max stay of 6 months. If I change my mind, he'll do the super visa. He then had a long call with his mom, which his older sister also joined in. It actually lasted an hour and a half. He was in the backyard for the call and came back in to grab a chair. It was that long. Also, from what I could see, he was mostly listening for that conversation. When he came back in, he told me to just not answer any calls or messages from his mom or sister. Meanwhile, I've received like 4 missed calls and 20 messages from them, mostly Islamic quotes about the rights of parents. I've told them that I can't talk since I'm busy with my son right now. I asked him how it went. He said as well as he expected, but he's not giving me the cold shoulder anymore. I do feel guilty because, like I said, I was actually looking forward to host her for a month, and I think this whole thing may have caused irreparable damage, not just to my relationship with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, but my husband's relationship with his mom and sister. I've told my mother-in-law I'll call her back in a couple of hours, once my husband's back. I'm dreading that conversation, but I know what my boundaries are. Thank you for the feedback, it helped. Alright, so now let's move on straight to the final update to see how this story ends. I spoke to my mother-in-law. Since her missed calls and texts were asking me to call her, I figured I should be the one to call, not my husband. But I put my phone on speaker so that my husband, who was lying on the couch, could also hear it. She said that my husband had told her he thought it'd be best if she restricts her trip to 1 month, since it was her first time in Canada and because we were really busy with our son. She then said that ever since my husband had come to Canada as an 18-year-old, he'd always wanted her to visit for a long duration, and now all of a sudden he was asking her to restrict it when she wanted to help with her grandson, and said she knew I must be the reason why. I said it was a joint decision because of the circumstances, but she wouldn't hear of it. She said that if her visiting for more than a month was so outrageous to us, then that's fine, she'll limit her stay, and the fact that she had to do so is something she was really upset about. I'm just going to assume everyone keeps their word for now. It's Ramadan and Eid soon as well, our first Eid with our son to look forward to. I don't want to think about what happens if she decides to stay longer. However, she also said that I should know that in Pakistan, in-laws live in the same house with the married couple, like my sister-in-law does. And then she said that she had thought I was in touch with my Islamic and Pakistani roots when I was getting married because that's what my husband had told her, but she was disappointed at how whitewashed I was. At this point, my husband asked me to give him the phone, but not before I told her that I was totally comfortable with how in tune with my heritage I was, and that apparently so was her son. Told her my husband had just come and handed him the phone. My husband went in the yard to talk, but I was so angry I decided to eavesdrop. He was talking to both my mother-in-law and father-in-law. He told them that he hadn't fled to Canada in the middle of the night as a student. They both had seen him off at the airport, and that when he had introduced me, hadn't kept the fact that I was born and raised in Canada a secret either. That they can't expect to treat us like a couple in Pakistan. Then he listened a whole lot for like half an hour. I gave him a chair again and kept telling them that it's different now. They ended the call with him saying that we were both really looking forward to her visit, that we'll make sure it's a great 30 or so days with us and her grandson. He apologized to me on behalf of his mom and asked me to please let her lecture go and still be on board with the 1-month plan. I'm looking forward to it much less than I was, but I said fine. The stuff she said about me not being in touch with my heritage was so messed up. Honestly, I really wanted to say a lot more, but my husband asked for the phone. My parents will be hosting her for dinner and all, of course. After hearing about everything that happened, my mom thinks she should come around too. I'm just conflicted if seeing my mom coming around so easily would reinforce my mother-in-law's sense of injustice. My mom left that decision to me. She told me she'll be 5 minutes away whenever I need her. Thanks again for the advice. Along with my mother, I was able to get good advice from here too, and I think I've managed to resolve this issue. I know myself, I know my mother-in-law staying over for years wasn't something I could deal with, and knowing a lot of people agreed was really helpful. Opie's edit. Thank you for the suggestion of setting up cameras in the areas that the baby will be in so it's not looked at as weird or invasive, to keep a record of things in case she tries something to break up my marriage by saying I did something when hubby walked out of the room or something like that. As icky as it feels to think she would want to deliberately do something like that, her comment about me being untrue to my heritage is still ringing in my ears. Alright, at least it seems like OP was able to set a boundary and stick with it. I'm still not really sure about the husband. I think he's very reluctant about all of this, but hopefully he doesn't backtrack and actually stick with OP. One thing I didn't understand is why he needed to leave the room every single time he was talking to his parents. Why couldn't he do that right next to his wife? I don't know if it's a cultural thing or not, but that bugged me a little bit. In any case, OP, here's wishing that your mother-in-law doesn't stay for longer than 30 days. Take care and thanks for sharing. And now let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's by user Mesoziozera. You want me to delete my own account in front of you? Okay, done. A bit of background first. 15 years ago, I worked at a gas station as an opener. Because I was young and somewhat tech savvy, I was also the de facto IT for the 3 stores near me. I had been heavily involved in setting up a new point of sales (POS) system for their 2 most successful stores when they were swapped from one gas brand to another. The company had made me the super admin on all registers just for ease of transition. Remember this later. The owner's wife had been awful to me for the 2 years that I worked there. I got bumped to opener by her husband and she hated to have a man be an opener. Historically, every single opener was picked by her and was a woman, but her husband came and fired the previous opener for theft while the 2 of us swapping shifts, so I got a field promotion of sorts. The wife was constantly scrutinizing everything that I did, constantly calling me in the mornings to be rude and berate me for a bunch of minor things I did wrong. You used wet wipes on the area around the drink machine. I want you to use paper towels and spray. We were out of paper towels and the spray we had smelled like a hospital anyway. I came in your store last night and there were 3 rows of Snapple apple. You could probably increase sales by putting 1 or 2 of those rows to a different product. Even though the Snapple fridge was 100% handled by the vendor and we'd signed a contract that we wouldn't change the layout of the product, etc, etc. Long story short, she was awful to me because I was a dude. Anyway, I had set up their point of sales system because I was somewhat tech savvy. I was made super admin on the new registers they had. I was desperately looking for work when I found a temp IT job which led to my current career in IT. I got a new job offer and gave her husband 2 weeks notice, but never told her because I did my very best to avoid talking to her unless necessary. When she found out, it was Tuesday of my last week and she legitimately lost her mind, gave me a ton of stuff to do and worked me to the bone until 2 p.m. on the last Friday I worked. Finally, the time to depart forever came, and she personally came with an office worker and stood by me and asked me to delete my account from the register. I knew I was a super admin and I had been told if I ever left to convert the account. She had been told this but had long forgotten it, so I said to hell with it and complied, then went to the other store and did likewise while she watched. I go about my life, start my new job, and end up about 3 weeks in when I get a frantic voicemail and like 20 texts and calls from her. I called the office worker who had stood over my shoulder with her and got the scoop. She basically couldn't change any prices at all when new beer and soda prices started rolling out, and her new opener had just let it all pile up because she didn't know how to do it and they were going to have someone come train her. They had a bunch of items 5 or 10% below the price they were supposed to be at. Margins on cases of beer are low and this was nuking their profits. Once I thought it over, I texted her and said, "You asked me to do this, it's on video and we have 3 witnesses. The person she had me training, the person I swapped with, and the office worker who had quit in the 2 weeks since." I found out later that they ended up spending $6,000 to get the company back out to fix the issue. Also, the boss's wife legit had a Facebook page at one point with people planning to crap on her grave when she died one day. Edit for clarity, she's still alive. So I wasn't the only person she was awful to, but I do feel like I got a one-up on her and it feels good. Well, OP, you definitely did get a one-up on her, a very expensive one-up for her. Thanks for sharing, OP. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out, so here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later, and also, don't forget to hit that subscribe